Chapter 4. Only Room Inside for One. I woke up the next morning a bit tired. In hindsight, yesterday was a long and emotionally draining day, and I could feel it this morning. But as I slowly made my way out from under the sheets and up to my feet, I had a surge of excitement for the day ahead. At this point, it was clear that my plan for a relaxing vacation was out the window, but this brought about a newfound sense of adventure. Despite being way out of my element, I was eager to see what Okablaya offered me next. As I walked downstairs, I could hear some light chatter from the main living space. When I entered the room, I saw Pono, Lalita, and Lala all sitting cross-legged on the floor facing each other in a circle. There was something burning, I think sage, and they each had journals and pens next to them. "There you are," Pono exclaimed as I walked in. "We were waiting for you for a while, but finally decided we better just get started without you." "Oh, sorry, I guess I slept in a little," I answered. "No need to be sorry at all. I wanted you to rest as needed." "What are you doing?" I asked as I looked more closely at the arrangement on the floor in front of them. There were journals, the burning sage, or whatever it was, various crystals, and one of those crystal sound bowls in the center of the circle. "We're setting intentions for the day," she explained with a smile. "Would you like to join us?" Yeah, sure," I replied as I got down to the floor and sat with my legs crossed. They all shimmied over to let me into the circle. Lalita began. "My intention for today is kindness. Yesterday I was not very nice to Lala when we were at school. I told her to leave me alone, and I know it hurt her feelings." "Thank you, Lalita," Pono replied. "And you, Lala?" She smiled before answering. "My intention for today is forgiveness. I was very angry at her after she said that to me, and I held it against her for most of the day." "Thank you, Lala," Pono responded. "I'll go next." She looked at each one of us and finished with a long gaze in my direction. "My intention for today is patience," she said in a soft voice. In reflection, I recognized several times yesterday in which I was impatient with our guest, Sandra. I was a little surprised to hear this, but I didn't disagree. As much as I love this project, I sometimes become frustrated and impatient about the things we have to teach to our guests, she explained. With each new class, it almost feels like we have to start over and rebuild everyone from the ground up. It can test my patience at times, and I don't believe I passed the test yesterday. "Oh, wow, thank you," I replied, "but that's not necessary. I appreciate everything you are offering me here." Pono smiled and took a long breath in and out. "Would you like to share next, Sandra?" "Okay," I started. "I'm not really sure what to say. It's hard to figure out exactly what my intention should be." "There is no should," she replied. "You can't get it wrong. Speak from the heart, not from the head." I nodded as I took a moment to relax and feel. "I guess my intention for today is to be more open," I began. "Yesterday I was a little blindsided by how much new and different information I learned, and I noticed how my knee-jerk reaction was to reject a lot of the ideas you shared with me." Pono sounded as she listened. "Today I will do my best to be more open and receptive to these new ideas." "Beautiful, Sandra. Thank you." The girls both nodded and smiled at me as we sat in silence for a few moments, breathing slowly and deeply. Pono then began playing the sound bowl softly, filling the room with a vibrational hum. As the hum filled the room, she started to om along with the sound of the bowl. On the third om, the girls joined in, and after a few more, I decided to give it a try. It felt clunky and weird at first, but after a few I was able to get in sync with the vibration of the bowl and the others. We continued chanting Om in this manner, and it felt easier and easier to generate the vibrations and synchronize our voices. Eventually, it felt effortless. We were falling into perfect harmony. At one point, I could not tell the difference between the vibration of the bowl or the sound of our voices. It was just one unified frequency that filled the room and my entire body. "One more," Pono said, and after the last, we all sat quietly. The stillness I felt in the next few moments was unbelievable. I noticed a huge smile on my face and honestly almost felt like I could cry. After a few more deep breaths in and long exhales, I broke the silence. "Wow, that was so amazingly beautiful." "Thank you for joining in," Pono responded. "I'm now so glad you were awake in time for our ritual." "Me too," I replied back. "I have to start doing this routine at home. I loved it." "I'm glad to hear that, but I do want to clarify that this is not just a routine. This is a ritual." "Oh, ritual. Sorry," I answered. "What's the difference exactly?" "The differences may seem minor, but the results can be tremendous," she began. "Anything can be part of a morning routine, making coffee, getting dressed, brushing your teeth, the everyday things." "Okay. But routines like this can often be mindless and automatic. And for many people, the things we do during these routines are not making us better and often moving us in the wrong direction." "A ritual means it's very intentional," Lala chimed in. "It means that you are doing something specific and you know it's going to make you better." I was very impressed with how the 9-year-old articulated this point. "Exactly," Pono replied. "It's a specific daily act that has a clear purpose and payoff. It's something you do to honor yourself and raise your vibration." "Oh, okay. Thank you for the clarification," I answered politely. "So I guess I will add this to my morning ritual when I get home." Everyone smiled as the girls began to clean up the space. I felt like today was off to a much better start than yesterday, and I was really starting to vibe with Pono and the girls. No pun intended. "Let's all take a few minutes to be with our thoughts, and then Sandra and I will head to the market for some food and things." "That sounds good to me," I replied as I got up and headed out to the back porch to sit. The girls each sat in their own space, writing in their journals, and Pono went upstairs. I sat in the hammock like I did last night, and when I did it, reminded me of the thoughts I was experiencing during my previous time out here. Today, I was less worried about them, but I definitely hadn't forgotten about this situation I was in. When they contacted me about this trip and told me I was one of the only hand-selected individuals, it definitely made me feel good. I've been recognized in my field many times with various accolades, but getting recruited for a classified project just seemed kind of cool, even when I thought it was just a mini vacation. But now I'm tangled up in something that feels like anything but a vacation. And from the way they described it to me last night, the stakes are high. I already devote my life to helping the world, so that part I'm okay with, but I never expected it to be in this type of predicament. I don't know what to expect for the rest of this trip, but right now I'm just going to remember my intention and remain open to it all. I'll allow things to unfold as they may and navigate the decisions when they come. I stood up and walked to the edge of the porch. Looking out into the jungle, I took a big breath and stretched my arms wide overhead. I felt a smile come across my face, and a jolt of playful joy ran through me in a way I hadn't felt in a long, long time. A few seconds later, Pono walked out and announced it was time to head to the market.
Hello, my primordial people. A quick story behind the story today. A short one. Did you know that the Primordial Code is also a paperback book that has been out for over a year already? You probably did, actually. But did you know that this idea of a free audio series was actually the original version of this idea when it first came to me? I always imagined creating a story that could spread freely and quickly with no barriers. I originally thought I might even publish it one chapter at a time as I wrote it. I ultimately decided against that, and I'm really happy that I did, but it kind of gives you an idea of where my mind has been on this. But another reason is that I always wanted a way to share this work for free. Sure, we all have to make money, and I understand there's a lot more to the discussion of impact and value and everything in the realm of financial success and freedom. I get all that. But I've been committed to having at least one option in which people could enjoy this work for free. A big part of that is because I believe that the primordial code truly does live within all of us already. And the wisdom that's transferred in this story from character to character and also to the listener is what I consider universal. I may have written it, but it does not belong to me. Most everything in this story I have collected on my journey along the way, and I can say with 1000% certainty that it's meant to be available to the world completely free of charge. Now, I did pause that version of the vision temporarily, and here's why. Remember that last story about how I was pressing to finish writing before my 3D life completely collapsed? Well, up until that point, I was still holding the vision of the audio story, but I was still getting very discouraged trying to finish the writing in time, knowing that I still had a very long, tedious, multiple-month undertaking of recording and editing ahead of me before it was done. The finish line of writing didn't really feel like a finish line. It felt like a starting line for a lot more work I did not have the bandwidth for at the moment. And not only would it be impossible for me to continue committing that much time, I'd be doing all of that extra work with the finished story just sitting on my hard drive being heard by no one. So I did some quick research on Amazon KDP, and I realized I could have it published in a matter of days for next to nothing. So I decided that's how it was meant to go out to the world. First, at least. But here we are, finally back to the main vision. And the biggest reason I held this vision because of how easy it is to spread. Sure, the book has done pretty well, all things considered. But getting people to first buy the book, then open it, then finish it, are three pretty big barriers in completing the story. Now, people can click a link and press play. That's it. So, all that to say, please share this story. If you're enjoying the journey, as soon as this chapter is done, press that share button and send it to a friend. Don't overthink it. The first person who comes to mind is the right one. Just trust it. The code will find those who are ready, as long as we don't interfere. So don't get in the way. Share it today.
Are we driving or walking? I asked as we started putting our shoes on. Well, it's a bit too far for walking with all the groceries we'll have to carry, so we can drive. Okay, I responded. Actually, she continued, it doesn't seem like you've been getting much physical exercise lately, so let's take the bikes. They have baskets on the back. I stopped dead in my tracks. Is that your way of calling me fat? I replied with some snark. You sound like my mother. No, I'm not calling you fat, she replied, but I am noticing some other signs that you haven't been fully honoring your physical body. Oh, I said, feeling a little silly now that I accused her of that. Like what? There's been a number of things, she began. To start, you slept well past sunrise this morning. Granted, yesterday was a long day, but this is one sign nonetheless. Oh, yeah, okay. What else? I also noticed some shallowness in your breathing during our morning alms. I could tell your diaphragm hasn't been challenged much lately. Really? You could tell that? Mm-hmm. Is that it, or is there more? I asked again, not really sure if I actually wanted to hear the answers. Your feet, she started. They are pale and soft. No ruggedness, no vascularity, collapsed arches. They don't appear to be working too hard these days, and they obviously don't touch the earth very often. I looked down at my feet. I have no idea of the last time they touched the earth. I felt a little embarrassed, but overall she was right. I hadn't been exercising much at all. Oh, wow, you really notice every little thing, I guess. These are not little things, Sandra. Sleeping, breathing, foot foundation. These are key aspects of physical health, Pono answered. And yes, you are carrying a little extra weight too, she added with a laugh. Even though it was an extremely rude thing to say, I actually giggled along with her. It didn't feel malicious or hurtful or judgmental. It just felt honest. Come on, The bikes are around the side of the house. We each grabbed a bike. They had 3 wheels and a large basket on the back, perfect for trips into town, as Pono explained. We took off down the winding road, headed toward the town square near the beach where we were last night for the bonfire. As we rode, I was taken back to memories of my sister and me riding our bikes down to the beach over summer break when we were younger. Something about being on a bike always made me feel relaxed, like I'm not in a hurry. Since those days of summer break, I can't say I've been on a bike or felt that feeling too often. I was also reflecting on Pono's comments about my physical health and how easy it was for her to notice I haven't been exercising much. In particular, the comment about sleeping past sunrise stood out. So I began to ask, "Are you saying you always wake up by sunrise?" "Of course," she replied. "Wow, that's early, no? I almost never see the sunrise." "That's such a shame," she began. "You are missing one of life's greatest treats." We turned our bikes into the park and rode along the path. And no, it's not early. We are programmed to rise with the sun. It's in our code. "Oh, come on. So you're telling me you don't hit the snooze button even once in a while?" "I don't ever hit the snooze because I don't use an alarm clock. I'm in full sync with the rising and falling of the sun," she answered. "You're up every morning with the sun without an alarm?" I asked surprisingly. "And I guess that means you go to bed early too? That's some serious discipline." "Discipline? No, not at all, actually," she started. "See, the word discipline implies I would rather be doing something else," she explained, "when the truth is, there's nothing else I'd rather be doing in the morning than rising with the sun. Nothing makes me happier than living in harmony with nature. There is nothing that could possibly make me happier, you see? This is happiness. This is what we are here to do." She pointed toward the water. "Let's go this way. It's a little longer, but we'll be riding along the shoreline. It's beautiful." We turned down a path that seemed like the wrong direction, but a few moments later I could see the beach in the distance. It was beautiful. "So how do I get better at this? I've always struggled with sleep." "Struggle in what way?" she asked. "Do you have trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking up?" "That's an easy question," I answered with a laugh. "All of the above." "Really?" she replied in a way that made me feel a little concerned. "Has this been going on for a while?" "Ever since I can remember, really. I mean, I've tried everything to make me fall asleep, but nothing ever works." "Okay, well, that's the first mistake," she replied. "You're trying." Yeah, I'm trying," I replied. "What else would I do?" "Well, Sandra, it's important that you understand what sleep really is. You must recognize what it means to truly be in sync with the circadian rhythm," she began. "The circadian rhythm is nature's strongest force on our system. The strongest force in the universe, actually. It's acting upon us and pulling us into rhythm at all times, and our body wants nothing more to be in sync with this force." "I'm well aware of the science behind circadian rhythm," I answered, "and I have a watch that connects to my phone and monitors my sleep patterns. It even gives me a score each morning. I've analyzed the data up and down, but I can't seem to pinpoint the problem." "Okay, let's back up a second," she stated as she stopped her bike. We turned toward the water as she pointed out toward the sun over the ocean. "Look at him. Feel his power for a moment." We both stood still, letting the warm sun hit our faces as she talked. "Every creature under the sun is wired to the sky. These universal forces are acting on us at all times, and they dictate the function of all of our biological systems," she explained. "We are either in sync and functioning properly, or we are out of sync and suffering." "Yes, I understand that part. I know I'm out of sync. I just..." "Listen, Sandra, I am explaining," she cut me off. "Sleep is a surrender. It is not something you try to do or force yourself to do. It is an allowance. When we fall asleep, we are allowing ourselves to be swept away into the flow of nature's rhythm." She turned and looked at me. "Sleep is about letting go. It is about releasing your worries and stresses and drifting into the dream space, a place of safety and comfort as your body repairs and heals. If you are unable to safely enter this space, it means there is an energetic blockage. She placed her hand on my heart. It is about trust and surrender, not data and apps. We got back on the bikes and began to ride again. The sun danced off the water toward us as we followed the shoreline toward the town. It was hot and sunny, but the breeze from the ocean kept us cool. It seems easy on paper, I continued the conversation. I mean, I try to let go and just fall asleep, but my mind always starts racing. I'll be in and out of sleep and spend half the night tossing and turning. Then when I finally do fall deeply asleep, it seems like my alarm goes off a minute later. This is very common among your people, she answered. And because it's common, it's accepted as normal. But it's anything but normal. Does everyone in Okablaya sleep as well as you do? Of course, she replied. Sleep is a sacred act in the Okablo lineage. It is how we stay connected to the spiritual realm and allow our body and mind to heal. It is dishonorable to yourself and your community to neglect your sleep. Dishonorable to the community? I asked surprisingly. How is that? By neglecting your sleep, you are choosing to be something other than your best. It means you will be unable to show up for yourself and for others at 100%. It means the things you are choosing instead of proper sleep are more important than the people who count on you. I pulled my head back slightly, slowly processing what Pono was teaching. Wow, that's definitely different from back home, I answered. Where I'm from, sleep is like a luxury. You're lucky if you can get it. People wear their fatigue like a badge of honor. I am aware, she replied with a sigh, as if she was disappointed by this truth. And the ramifications of a sleep-deprived society have never been more obvious. It's why it's such an important piece of our work. So you'll help me with this? I asked as I pedaled up right next to her. Of course, she answered. We will work together. Anything I can do to start? Maybe some key points to think about? She didn't answer right away. She just kept pedaling alongside me, contemplating her response carefully. You are a thinker, Sandra. I know this. This is what you are trained to do, she said as we slowed down and approached the town square. This is not something that can be addressed with a magic fix. This is more of a fundamental shift in who you are. She popped off her bike and leaned it on a light post. I'm here to help you get out of your head and into your heart. We unhooked the baskets from the bikes and walked into the town square where the market was being held. It was a big street market with tables and stands set up all down the road. There were lots of people moving about, buying their provisions and socializing with others. The fruit stands were stacked high with every fruit imaginable, and the tables full of leafy green vegetables to boot. I could smell freshly baked bread and also saw booths with mason jars filled with teas and jams. There were also several merchants selling handmade clothes and jewelry that caught my eye, but Pono didn't seem interested in stopping to shop around. It was very busy and full of people, but still a relaxed atmosphere. There was a woman with a beautiful voice playing acoustic guitar and singing, and people either walking or biking up and down the roads. We got to a main intersection, and I could see that the market continued in all four directions. It was quite a scene, like a farmer's market on steroids. This is pretty amazing, I shared with Pono. How often do they hold this market? Every day, Pono replied as she browsed the booths. Really? So how much of your food do you get here versus the regular grocery store? We get all of our food here, she responded. Well, anything we don't grow ourselves. This is our regular grocery store. Just then, Pono approached a booth she clearly visited often. Good morning, darling, Pono announced to the woman behind the counter. Hey, Pono, great to see you, she said. The woman then began shuffling through some cartons of eggs and handed Pono one of the cartons from the bottom of the stack. Here you go. Lady Priscilla has delivered these just for you, she said with a smile. Pono opened the carton, and I could see an array of farm-fresh eggs that were different shades of beige, brown, and even a light blue color. "Who's Lady Priscilla?" I whispered to Pono as she inspected the eggs. "It's the hen that laid these beautiful eggs," she answered. "She's been my hen of choice for several years now." "You know the exact hen that lays your eggs?" I asked. "Of course," she responded, "and more importantly, she knows me." "She knows you? How?" "The girls and I visit her once or twice a week. We'll take a ride over to the farm after dinner some nights to feed her and spend some time with her. The girls like to pet her and sing her songs." "Seriously?" I responded. "And why is that?" "Because it's important for us to know the source of our eggs, and it's just as important for her to have a connection with those that she provides." I could not believe what I was hearing. I followed Pono in silence as she paid for her eggs and began walking down the street again. A few tables down, she purchased a small jar of ground turmeric from an elderly woman, and then some cranberry hibiscus leaves for tea from a young boy who claimed that he grew it himself in his parents' garden. Thinking back to her earlier comments, I had to follow up with some questions. "So no grocery store at all?" "Look around. Does it look like we need a grocery store? We have everything right here at the market." "Okay, but I don't understand. You just buy all of your food from strangers like this?" "I know many of these people very well, Sandra. They are not strangers." "Okay, well, maybe not complete strangers, but they're just regular people selling stuff from their house." "Yes, and?" "And how do you even know what you're buying?" I asked. "Most of these things don't even have labels. You don't know what could be in them." "Do you always know what you're buying in your grocery store, Sandra?" "Well, yeah, there are brands with long-standing reputations. They've been around for a long time, and I know them and trust them." "And why do you trust these brands?" "Because the products they sell are highly regulated. They are held to very high standards." "So you trust them because of the regulations?" "Yeah, that's the point of having them." "So then," Pono continued, "what would you do if it wasn't so regulated? What would you do if the FDA and all those types of agencies were shut down tomorrow?" "You mean like anyone could just sell anything they want?" "Yes." "Well, first of all, I would definitely be more cautious, that's for sure. I'd have to research my options way more thoroughly because I would need to know the exact process on how it's made and how it gets to me. I would have to be much more diligent." "Exactly," she responded. "Exactly what?" I replied back, not sure what she was implying. "That's exactly what you would do, and so would everyone else," she began to explain. "Right now, everyone just blindly trusts the regulations. They don't do any of the things you just said. No due diligence at all. Instead, they just assume that if it's on the shelf, it must be safe, and that's the end of it." "Well, at least you know it's not going to kill you," I replied. "Incorrect," she responded. "Have you been to a modern grocery store lately? Virtually everything they sell will kill you if you eat it on a regular basis. It just doesn't kill you fast enough to be illegal." She paused to buy 2 heads of cauliflower from a stand with no one tending it. She dropped some money in a basket on the table and kept moving. "Imagine if everyone actually researched their food options the way you just described. Imagine if all food companies knew that their consumers were going to actively research their product, the ingredients, the process, and the company history." She shook her head and chuckled. "Everyone thinks the regulations prevent these big corporations from harming us, when it's the very thing that allows them to do it. In fact, they lobby for the regulations more than anyone else, something no one really knows because, well, they don't know anything about these companies, just like you said." She handed me her full basket and took my empty one and began filling it with various green leafy vegetables from a table towards the end of the road. They still had dirt all over them. "Picked less than an hour ago," the man behind the counter announced proudly as Pono sifted through the pile. "An unregulated market would be the worst nightmare for these conglomerates," she continued. "The last thing they want is people closely examining their actual business practices." Okay, but what about safety? I challenged. Look at those vegetables you just bought. They were still dirty. Who knows what else could be on them or what his intentions really are? Without the FDA, your food could be poisoned. I know, she responded. And on the way home, someone could shoot me and kill me. And someone could break into my house tonight and kidnap me, right? I take precautions as needed, and using my senses and awareness, I continue to live on with my life, knowing that any of these things are highly unlikely. She gave one more look around the booths and turned back towards the way we came. If someone wants to kill people, sneaking poisoned food onto the shelves at the grocery store would be a very strange way to do it, she continued. Plus, by your logic, you are saying that we cannot just trust people we don't know, but these governing bodies are also made up of people we don't know, right? So why would they be more trustworthy, especially when they have so much more to gain by being dishonest? As she spoke, I looked around at the vendors and the shoppers. Nobody seemed concerned about the free market setup. I could see that many people had personal relationships with the vendors themselves, and I noticed many others having lengthy conversations with the sellers about the ingredients and the preparation process of the products. There was a certain level of trust between everyone here that was so unfamiliar to me it seemed almost abnormal. Compared to what's going on in California right now, this most definitely is a foreign land. With our baskets nearly full, we began strolling back up the road toward our bikes. You need to understand something about federal agencies responsible for protecting you, she continued as we walked. What's that? I asked. They don't work, she responded bluntly. They don't work, I replied. I know they have a bad rep, and maybe for a good reason, but to just flat out say they don't work is probably untrue, don't you think? No, I don't think that at all, she replied immediately. They don't work, and in many cases they cause you more harm than they protect you from. She moved a little closer to me as we walked and turned slightly in my direction. Let's start with something simple, she began. The cereal aisle. The cereal aisle? Okay, I responded, unsure of where she was going with this. When you walk down the cereal aisle in the United States, what do you see? Brightly colored boxes with big bubbly letters and cartoon characters on them, right? Yeah, I replied, remembering some of my childhood favorites like Fruity Pebbles, Trix, and Fruit Loops. These graphic designs are carefully curated by highly paid experts to be absolutely, irresistibly attractive to young children. They hit every biological, psychological, and sociological target so precisely that it's actually physiologically impossible for a young child not to desire what's inside, she explained. And that's just the packaging, which in itself might not seem like such a big deal until you find out what is actually in the box. She continued to stroll along, browsing the stands from a distance as she spoke. Like we said, most parents pick the box up off the shelf and drop it into the cart without even looking because, well, it's in the grocery store, right? How bad could it be? She asked rhetorically. But let me tell you, Sandra, it's as bad as it can be. Literally. I realized that this was another emotionally charged topic for her, and she was beginning to speak with the same passion I heard yesterday when she was discussing the education system. Between the chemicals, the preservatives, the color dyes, the artificial flavors, and of course the sugar, you could not physically create a more harmful product that children would actually eat, she stated. Do you understand what I mean? You literally could not create something worse for children to consume on a regular basis that they would voluntarily eat. I just listened. And not only do they happily eat it, it's highly addictive, which means they'll want it every single day, over and over, year after year, which is precisely the goal, she went on. If your children ate a box of Lucky Charms every day, General Mills would love you. If they ate 2 boxes, they would love you even more. 3 boxes, even more than that. There is absolutely no regard for the well-being of your child whatsoever. Yeah, I guess they could do a better job of regulating the children's cereal, I responded. No, actually they couldn't. This is their best job. This is the system working exactly how it is designed. We arrived at the bikes, strapped the baskets back on, and began to ride. Do you realize the absurdity of this? The agencies responsible for making sure the food on the shelves is safe are allowing addictive poisons to be sold to children in cartoon-covered boxes, she continued. It would be comical if it wasn't tragic. I didn't say anything. I was just thinking about what she said. I remembered as a child begging my mom in the grocery store for Cinnamon Toast Crunch and being so excited when she would drop them in the cart. I even remember the feelings of excitement I would have when I saw the commercials with the catchy tagline, "Swirls of cinnamon and sugar on every bite." Looking back, I'm sure my mom knew they weren't the best, but she probably never really looked into how bad it actually was. So you don't think everything you said would just get worse if we switched to a completely free market? I asked. Worse than selling addictive poison to young children in cartoon boxes? She replied. I'm not sure how it could. Well, what do you think would happen? I'll tell you exactly what would happen, she replied. You already said it yourself. The companies and the consumers would approach the process from a different place. Shoppers would have to accept the ownership and responsibility of their choices, and the good companies would take advantage of this by providing complete transparency about their products, their processes, and their business models, from their marketing strategies down to their profit margins. Any health-conscious shopper would stop buying from publicly traded companies instantly, because by law, those companies can only make decisions that are statistically most likely to increase the profit of the shareholders. Once people can see how these companies are actually operating, they would be infuriated. Well, what if they don't actually show it? If there are no laws requiring them to, why would they do it? Such a great question, Sandra. I'm glad you asked. This is the beauty of a free market, she started. They don't actually have to show anything. But then again, would you buy food from someone who refuses to reveal what's in the product? No, I answered, but they could lie. Yes, they could, but it's not just about what they are saying or what they put on the labels. Remember, Sandra, a truly free market would be so radically different, it would be incomparable to what we currently have. In this world, it would be expected that companies have video tours of all their farms or factories, challenging interviews with the CEOs, and opportunities for you to become intimate with the brand and their employees. Liars don't last long in a world built on trust. It's hard to imagine, I responded. Try imagining this, she began. A world in which profits are not the most important thing. Okay, but in a free market, profits are still the motive. They are what actually drive people to solve problems and offer solutions at an affordable price, I responded, thinking back to my college economics class. Yes, and there is still plenty of chance to yield healthy margins. The difference is, in this world, becoming a worldwide enterprise turning billions in profits at the expense of your customers and employees is considered dishonorable, instead of being something everyone strives for, she explained. Imagine instead a world in which being of service to your fellow people and providing a healthy, environmentally conscious, ecologically sustainable product is the most honorable thing a business can do. We parked the bikes and carried the baskets inside. And here's the kicker, she went on. Any brand that does this would be loved in such a way that turning enough profit for everyone in the company to live happily would happen naturally. You know this sounds absolutely absurd to me, and would also to anyone from home that heard it, right? I do, and I understand. It's unfortunate that they come from a world in which these concepts are so foreign, she answered. But soon this will no longer be the case. Soon people will return to a world in which trust and honor outweigh all else. A world in which goods and services is actually the appropriate name for what the best businesses provide. A world in which all economic exchange has a winner on both sides of the transaction. Sounds great. I wish I had as much faith as you do, I replied. I love this idea, but I don't see how anyone is going to get these concepts into everyone's minds. You don't have to, she answered. They are already there. What? I laughed. It's all embedded deeply in the code, Sandra. What code? I replied back. She dropped her basket on the counter, turned sharply, and looked right at me. The Primordial Code. The Primordial Code? I asked. I've never heard of that before. I know, she replied, but you have now, and from this point on, things will begin to change. Whoa, I answered with a laugh. Must be pretty powerful if all you have to do is say the words and things magically begin to change. It's not just words. It's a powerful force, and once you've been introduced to it, your whole world shifts. You can't go back to seeing things through your old eyes again. I see. So now that you just said those words, my life will never be the same, I said playfully. A little warning would have been nice. She smiled, but only slightly, telling me this wasn't something to joke about. You were made aware of this already. It was discussed thoroughly in your interviews. I'm pretty certain none of the recruiters mentioned anything about learning a code when they were asking me to come here. No, not in those words, but you knew you were coming here to learn our ways, to learn what allows us to be the only modern culture on Earth that lives in harmony, right? Right. Okay, so this code is part of it? The code is all of it, she replied boldly. It's the root of everything we believe, that we stand for, and that we strive for. I didn't answer at first. I didn't realize that there was going to be something so clear and concrete as a code. I immediately noticed a lot of resistance coming up towards this idea. It felt very religious, I guess. Okay, so where do I learn this primal code? I asked curiously. Primordial Code, Pono corrected me quickly. There's a big difference. Oh, sorry. So where do I learn this Primordial Code? Well, to start, it's important to understand that you already know it. You just aren't fully tapped into it yet. I already know it? I asked puzzledly. How? It's been in you since birth, she replied. Long before, actually. And since the moment you were born, you've been subconsciously trying to figure out how to express this code here in this physical realm. But it's very difficult. I could feel Pono shifting into a motherly state, like she was speaking to a child about where babies come from, or another difficult but important topic. She sighed softly before continuing. Sandra, when a child comes into this world, its heart already knows everything it will ever need to know. It contains all of the wisdom of the universe without needing any help at all. You understand? Actually, no, not really. It already knows how to love. Nobody needs to teach the baby what love is. Nobody has to help it understand how to give it or receive it. All it knows is love. It exists in a complete state of love. She made her way down to the floor onto one of the cushions, motioning for me to join her. The challenge, however, is that even though the heart is fully functioning, the brain is not. The brain is a completely blank slate, and it's trying to figure out how to navigate through this realm as best as it can without exiting that state of love. That's the feedback mechanism. That's the barometer, if you will. She lit some incense. Wherever the sensation of love grows stronger, the brain registers it as positive and leads the body towards more of it. Wherever it dims, the brain registers as negative and leads the body away from it. I listened and processed quietly. And so it begins, Pono said with a bit of a strange energy. There was almost a hint of sadness, but very subtle. What begins? I asked. Life, she said. The never-ending quest to figure out how to get back to that original state of love. We both just sat in silence for a moment, in our own thoughts. That's all we are doing here, really, she continued. Just trying to find our way back home. Just trying to find our way to that place of unconditional love we all know exists inside of us. As I laid and listened, I felt very relaxed and comfortable. Between the smell of the incense and the warm sun coming into the room, it was almost like I was experiencing a tiny taste of the state she was describing. "That place sounds nice," I whispered. "I wish I knew how to get there." "You do," Pono replied right away. "We all do." "We do? How?" "Just unlock the code and let it guide you." "The Primordial Code is going to lead me to this place?" "Yes, if you allow it." "Are you going to teach it to me?" "I don't have to teach it to you. You already know it. I'm just going to help you tune into it more deeply." "How long will it take?" I asked. "The rest of your life," she replied. "Well, you'll spend the rest of your life trying, at least. That's why I told you earlier things will never be the same after today." "But nothing has actually happened. You just told me what it's called. I don't actually understand it yet." "And you won't still for a long time, maybe ever. But today marks the beginning of your quest to understand it. And it's on this quest that you will find every answer you need." I laid there for a moment and tried to make sense of what she was saying. "So I understood it as a baby, but now I could spend the rest of my life trying to relearn it and might not be able to?" I asked. "I'm sorry, but something just doesn't make sense about this." "I understand," she replied. "The logical brain wants to reject this idea because, well, it seems illogical." "It is illogical," I replied. "You're correct. It is completely illogical," she responded. "And from here on forward, you're entering a frequency field that supersedes logic." Supersedes? If you're trying to sway me right now, I'm sorry, but you're taking the wrong angle. "Remember to honor your intention for the day, Sandra." Ah, damn, she was right. I wasn't being very open right now. "Not only is your logical mind very linear and limited in its ability to perceive, it's rigid and closed off and afraid, honestly," she continued. "It doesn't want to believe that there is more than the eye can see, or that there are more powerful forces at play." She turned and looked at me. "Notice what you just did. You immediately rejected this idea. You rejected from a place of fear." "I wouldn't say it was fear," I replied. "It's just hard for me to get behind concepts like this. It just seems so woo-woo and out there. I don't really give them much thought." "Exactly," she replied. "Because if you give it any real thought, something might click. You might have an internal shift in perspective. You might accidentally open yourself up to something that goes against your normal way of thinking. And then what? Then you might have to reconsider some of the things you've always done or always thought. And then what do you do? What do you do when you realize that some of the things you've always thought to be true aren't?" I squirmed a little, adjusting my position on the floor. "That's a scary thing, Sandra," she continued. "Not just for you, but for everyone. Even though most never consciously think about it, it's a fear that runs through all of us." She took a deep breath and let out a gentle sigh. "Unwillingness to explore alternative viewpoints is always done from a place of fear," she stated in an authoritative tone. "Always." We just rested on the floor. Despite the energy of the conversation, I still felt very much at peace, just taking it in. I was starting to understand Pono much better, and I was becoming comfortable in these challenging conversations, knowing there was no animosity towards me personally. After a few moments of silent thought, she asked me a question. "Sandra, why do you think you are here?" "Why am I here?" I responded, a bit confused. "I'm here to learn and explore Okablaya." "What do you mean?" "Yes, but why do you think you ended up here?" "I was selected as part of the group, mostly because of my reputation in my field, I'm guessing. They probably thought I could make a lot of impact back home with all the resources and connections I have." "Why else?" I don't know. I think that's probably it." "Okay, but why do you really think you ended up here?" Why did your soul want to be here? What does it know it will learn from this experience? What does my soul know it will learn? I don't know. You'll have to ask it, I replied with a laugh. I'm sorry, dear, but that's a question only you can ask, she smiled as she answered. In fact, I'll give you some space to get the conversation started. She made her way to her feet and began walking towards the kitchen. You're not going to teach me how? I asked as I sat up. You're the spiritual teacher here. I've never done anything like this. I've never talked to my soul before. Okay, she replied. I'll tell you the only thing you need to know. She paused by the kitchen doorway and turned back towards me. There are no secrets or strategies, she began. You know what to do. You've actually talked to your soul plenty of times, even if you never realized. Just trust yourself. And as your awareness of the relationship grows, so will the depths of the dialogue. That's it, I replied. Now I'm just on my own. I'm always here to support, Sandra, she answered. But when it comes to this work, it is vital for you to understand that there is only room inside for one. I continued to lie on the floor as Pono left the room and went into the kitchen. Only room inside for one, I whispered to myself. I looked down at the front of my body, between my chest and my belly button, and for some reason this seemed like a place where my soul might want to hang out. I just stared. Part of me wanted to talk to it, but the rest of me felt completely silly. I really had no idea what to do. Should I talk out loud or just think about the question in my head? No one was around, but I still felt embarrassed. Finally, I took a deep breath and asked, Okay, soul, why are you here? Obviously, there was no answer. A moment later, I repeated the question, this time with a little more oomph. Soul, why are you here in Okablaya? I then waited for the answer to come. I wasn't sure if it was supposed to come as a voice in my head or some kind of sign, but I didn't get either. I sat up straight and leaned against the wall. This is ridiculous, I mumbled to myself in frustration. My soul doesn't know what the hell it's doing here. How could it? This whole trip has felt like some crazy wrong turn. How could my soul possibly make sense of it? It doesn't actually make sense at all. What am I doing here? Instead of asking my soul, I should really be asking myself, do I even want to be here? A week ago, I was living a normal life. Now I'm in some strange country where I don't know anyone, in the middle of some kind of political conflict, lying on the floor, talking to my stomach and expecting it to talk back. I shook my head in disbelief. It's like I've totally forgotten who I am in just a few days. Honestly, I should just forget this silly spiritual nonsense altogether and just go back to being me. I tossed aside the pillow I was holding on my lap and crossed my arms, pouting. Even if I start now, it will probably take me the rest of the trip to shake out of this mess and remember who I really am. Whoa, what was that? I leaned forward, away from the wall. It was like a jolt of electricity ran up my spine when I said those words. Remember who I really am, I repeated. This time, I felt a tingly rush down my arms and into my fingers, like a shot of nervous adrenaline I used to feel before my piano performances. I instantly recalled the conversation from yesterday when Pono told me I would soon remember who I really am. And again, just a few moments ago, when she spoke about remembering what we were born with. It was like the last 2 days were swirling into some tornado of coincidences that were leading me right to this moment. I could feel my heart beating faster and my eyes darting back and forth. I was trying to think of a logical explanation for these sudden feelings and thoughts, but I couldn't. Was this my soul talking to me? Was it telling me I'm here to remember who I really am? I took a few deep breaths. I felt afraid, honestly. Does this mean that I don't know who I really am? That can't be possible. Can it? No, it can't. Just then Pono walked back into the room. "Are you okay, Sandra?" she asked as she entered. Yeah, I'm fine," I replied as casually as possible. "You sure? I sense some tense energy coming from in here, and you look like you've seen a spirit." "Oh," I giggled, trying to act natural. "No, just daydreaming, thinking about what you were saying earlier." "Okay," she replied. "Well, you better head upstairs and get dressed. Kaitiki will be here soon to pick you up." "Pick me up?" I asked. "For what?" "Oh, she didn't tell you? She's taking you to hang out with some friends tonight. Nothing crazy, just a little get-together." "No, she didn't tell me," I replied. "I'll go get changed." I popped up and walked quickly toward the stairs, but Pono could tell something was up. She stuck her arm out to stop me as I passed. "Sandra, there's nothing to be afraid of here," she began. No, I know," I replied sheepishly. "I'm not afraid." I stopped talking as she put her hands on my shoulders. "Look at me," she said sternly as we locked eyes. "Those who choose to quest for the code are protected." Boom. Again, the adrenaline up my spine. But this time there was no fear. Instead, I stood tall and felt strong. Powerful, almost. I locked eyes with Pono and let out a calming exhale. "Thank you." "It's just a few friends getting together. Nothing formal," Kaitiki explained to me as we drove away from Pono's home. "Just some music, food, and good conversation. It's super chill." "Oh, sounds cool. Is it like someone's birthday or something?" "No, we usually do community dinners like this once or twice a week," she replied. I felt a little anxious thinking about hanging out with Kaitiki's friends in an intimate setting, but also excited to meet new people. It was a short drive, barely 5 minutes up the mountain. We pulled around the back of the house where a small group of people, maybe a dozen or so, were sitting around a fire. Everyone seemed to know each other pretty well. Most were engaged in conversation, while one was playing a metal drum and a few others were setting out some food. I received a few smiles and nods as I walked in with Kaitiki. Then we sat down next to one of her friends near the fire. "This is Sandra," she said as she introduced me to her friend. "Hey, I'm Kelly," she replied with a smile. "You must be a Delphin, I'm guessing." "Yep," I replied with a chuckle. "Pretty easy to tell I'm an outsider, huh?" "I can usually pick them out of the crowd," she replied playfully. "I was a Delphin, too." "Really?" I replied, a bit surprised. Based on her attire, her tan, and her general vibe, I would have thought she was an Okablo for sure. "Mm-hmm. And what, you live here now?" "Yep," she replied. "After shift, I never went back." "Never went back?" I asked in disbelief. "Well, I went back to get some things and say goodbye to my family, but then I got back on the plane to Okablaya to start my new life, and, well, I've been here ever since." "Wow, that's crazy," I replied. "Good for you, though." "Thanks. The choice was actually pretty easy. I wanted to be where the code reigns supreme," she explained. "Once I began to harmonize with the frequency field of Okablaya, I couldn't go back to New York." I was shocked to hear this. I had so many questions, but before I could ask, Kaitiki gently grabbed my arm and invited me to go get some food with her. The tables were filled with an amazing assortment of homemade dishes. Like I've come to expect here, everything was fresh and vibrant and bursting with life. I filled my plate and made my way back to the ground near the fire. There were a few people playing music now, and several others singing along lightly as they ate and mingled. The sun was starting to set in the background, making for a beautiful view over the mountains. The air was cooling a bit with a nice breeze, and the warm fire made for a perfectly comfortable setting. As I sat and ate quietly, I looked around at the group and happened to notice how comfortable I felt. The term that Kelly used, frequency field, suddenly made perfect sense to me. Okablaya was more than just an unfamiliar place. It really was like being in a different frequency. It was surprising for me to hear that she decided not to go back home. But in moments like this, I could almost see how she made that choice. As I was pondering this, Kelly actually came back down and sat next to me. So, Kaitiki tells me you're a DR, she started. What's a DR? I asked. Direct recruit, she replied. They invited you directly to join the group. There's usually only a small handful of DRs in each class. Oh, yeah, they did invite me directly, I replied, but I didn't know there was a term for it. I was a DR too, she explained. You were? Do you know why? I'm really curious to know why. No, actually, I never did find out, she responded. At first, I really wanted to know. I was all proud of myself for being selected, you know? She took a pause, reflecting on her thoughts. But once I got here, my life started changing so fast that I stopped caring about that. It stopped seeming important. I now had too many more important things to figure out. Like whether or not to attend shift, I asked. Well, yeah, that was one of the big ones. But there were so many others as well, she answered. I had to figure out who to trust, who to believe, when to push back, when to let go, when to hold boundaries, when to speak up, and when to just shut up and listen. It was like a whole new arena for me. I soon realized it didn't matter why they chose me. All that mattered was that I was here and I had to figure out how to adapt. I sure hear that, I replied. New arena is an understatement. Yep, it sure is, she replied with a smile. But it was through that adaptation that I evolved into this new, better version of myself. She gazed out over the mountains for a moment. Like most of the others here, she was very calm and grounded. It was obvious that she was authentic, not trying to impress me or put on a front. At home, my life was so crazy and wild, she picked back up. My work was so fast-paced and intense, but that stress felt normal. It actually felt comfortable in some ways. It was just how people lived. She paused as someone passed her what appeared to be a joint. She closed her eyes for a moment and held it to her heart before taking a hit. As she held in the breath, she reached it up in my direction with a, "Do you want some?" type gesture. "Oh, no thanks. I'm okay," I replied. Then boom, she continued as she exhaled. All of that was gone, and it was just these strange people I knew nothing about, and myself, who I soon realized I also knew nothing about. She stared into the fire for a few moments before continuing. It was scary as hell, but it was also the beginning of a beautiful journey toward uncovering who was really inside. It does sound like quite the journey, I responded. You said you were from New York, right? What was your life like there? I was a corporate lawyer, she replied. Ivy League grad, worked for a huge firm, clawed my way up the ladder, basically to the top, she shared in a way that sounded more shameful than proud. I lived and breathed the work. I thrived in that environment. Day and night, I devoted myself to improving my performance, which, frankly, was just finding new and better ways to sue people. Oh, come on, there's more to it than that. I'm sure you were able to help people get justice and serve a greater good, no? Well, yeah, there was some of that sprinkled in, just barely enough to help me validate and justify the way I was living, she started. There's plenty of good lawyers out there, but in all honesty, when I look back now, I wasn't one of them. And I didn't know many who were. She turned toward me. We all told ourselves the same stories to help us sleep at night, but on a day-to-day basis, it wasn't about justice and service. It was about your status and your reputation and your record in the courtroom. And most of all, it was about your money. She shook her head as she said this. It was all a big game, and we fucking loved to play it. She took another puff of her joint and let out a long exhale as she continued looking into the fire. If you felt this way, why didn't you stop? I'm sure you could have pivoted into something else pretty easily. I didn't want to stop, she answered. I was in too deep. I was addicted to the game in every way. I didn't let myself even see what it really was. Actually, no, scratch that. I could see it. It was clear as day, right in front of my face. I just didn't let myself feel it. What do you mean? I asked. I didn't let myself truly feel what I was experiencing inside. The misalignment, the guilt, the stress, none of it. I just ignored it or numbed it. I drowned it out with fancy dinners, expensive vacations, shoes, handbags, parties, the usual painkillers. And most of all, I numbed it with more work. Wow, sounds like you were in a really bad place, I responded. Yes, but I had no idea, she answered right away. In fact, I could have made a really strong case that I was crushing life, actually. Living the dream. She snorted and rolled her eyes. Once I got here, I learned how to really feel. I learned how to tune in and understand what was really going on inside, she explained. I stopped making decisions based on what other people would think or what they would do and just started to get down to the root of my pains. I learned how to communicate with my body and how to get my mind and my body on the same page. Now, when there's a misalignment, I feel it instantaneously. How? I asked. How did you learn how to do that so well? She thought about it for a moment. There was no one specific thing, really. There were a series of events, some big, some small, that really shifted something inside for me. Can you tell me a little more about them? She paused and took a breath. No, I'm not going to, she replied. Oh, all right, I answered, very thrown off by her response. Is it against the rules or something? No, but these experiences were unique to me, and if I shared too much, it could create unrealistic expectations for you and potentially influence your decisions while you're here, she explained. It's better for you to have your own unique journey. Okay, that makes sense, I guess, I answered. It did make sense, but I was really hoping to get more out of her. To my side, I heard Kaitiki saying goodbye to a friend, and then she turned back into the conversation. What about you? Kelly asked me. What kind of life did you leave behind? Oh, I have not left anything behind, I replied. Just sort of pressed pause on life for a brief moment. Oh, right. Gotcha, she answered. I'm a PhD in evolutionary biology, I stated. Oh, a scientist. Very cool, she replied. Although being in such a masculine, energetic field probably caused a lot of the same challenges for you that it did for me in law. No, not really, actually. I actually feel quite respected by my male colleagues and generally supported as a woman in the field. Okay, yeah, sorry, that's not what I meant, she answered. When I say masculine energetic field, I'm referring to the masculine energy. It doesn't necessarily mean men. Well, what does it mean then? I asked, puzzled. Masculine and feminine aren't just genders, they are energies, she began. I was unaware of this until I came here also. She paused like she was thinking about how to explain it to me. From my understanding, science is really based on logic and facts and order and systems and methods, right? Of course, I responded. Yeah, this is very left brain thinking, which is linked to the masculine, she continued. It's rigid and boxy, so linear, so literal. It's about doing, completion, execution, finishing the job. Yes, that's definitely true, I replied. Same with law, she answered. I had no idea how far out of touch I was with my feminine. Well, what is the feminine energy? It's the counterbalance to everything I just mentioned. It's about creativity and flow and openness. It's about nurture and care and emotions. It's less about getting it done and more about being present in the process. She looked at me as she spoke. It's art and music, you know? You do it for the love and for the feelings in the moment. You don't do it to win or accomplish some arbitrary goal. Okay, I see the difference now, I answered. You know, though, it's funny because some aspects of my work aren't so literal. Many of the things I focus on are actually theoretical. Really? Really, Kelly replied. Like what? Well, technically evolution is a theory, and although we know it to be true, much of what we discuss is based on theory. Okay. So you know when you hear people on the news or whatever say, scientists believe yada yada, or scientists theorize that blah blah blah, well, they're talking about me. Oh, that's funny, she answered. Yeah, a huge part of my work is matching the data and the theories to create consensus. What do you mean? Scientific consensus. It's what drives our industry, I explained. We piece the facts together and fill the holes with the most logical scientific explanations. Oftentimes, they cannot be factually proven, but when you create a strong enough argument and enough experts agree, then it becomes factual for all intents and purposes. Really? She asked. I never knew that. Yeah, I actually did a thesis on the importance of scientific consensus in the advancement of the human species, I explained. I showed how valuable it is to be able to proceed with research and new discoveries based on the consensus, as opposed to wasting time and resources trying to prove things that everyone knows are true. I'm not sure I follow. So, perfect example. Gravity, I began. Gravity is a theory that everyone understands and knows is true, even though it's never been proven. But because the experts, and non-experts actually, can all agree that it's true, we can use it factually in scientific calculations. We can also build other theories off of it. Okay. In other words, if NASA spent all of its time and resources trying to scientifically prove gravity, they'd be wasting precious time that can be used to discover other things about space. I think I get it now, Kelly replied. Yeah, so think about all of the amazing and mind-blowing discoveries that NASA has made in the past 50 years. Insane, right? And every single thing that NASA has ever discovered is based on the theory of gravity being true. You see? Right. We wouldn't know any of the stuff we know now about space if we weren't able to use scientific consensus to accept that the theory of gravity is actually true, I explained. We'd still be watching apples fall from the tree and arguing over Newton's research. It would cause so many delays in our research and discoveries. Okay, I see, she replied. So instead of taking the time to fully prove certain theories, they are accepted as true so you can apply them to more important research. Bingo. And you pretty much do the same thing with evolution? Right again, I replied. I help piece together the puzzle of our evolutionary timeline, and most importantly, use that information to predict the future of the human race. So you, connect the dots between our evolutionary past and future? Kaitiki asked, also listening intently. Basically, yes, I responded. What that actually looks like in practice varies from project to project, but right now I'm the head of the research department for a biomedical company. Wow, that sounds exciting. It is. We're working to reimagine the future of healthcare, I started. We're working on new technologies, specifically with DNA modification, that could prevent or cure most of the diseases we see in the world today. DNA mutates naturally over time, but with the work we're doing, we could potentially accelerate these natural processes exponentially. They both responded. The power of AI combined with the latest in wearable and injectable technology is creating new possibilities that were inconceivable even just 10 years ago. We are entering the next stage of human evolution, and my company is helping usher it into existence in the most positive way. The next stage of human evolution, she repeated back to me. What does that mean exactly? Well, that's not entirely clear yet, but we are getting really close to knowing. In fact, that's actually what most of my research is focused on, I explained. My team is working to predict exactly how humans will evolve based on the changes in our environment and the changes in technology, so we can help usher in these changes. I turned and faced her, sitting cross-legged. Here, let me summarize it for you, I began cheerfully. I always get excited to talk about what I do, especially when I can break it down in layman's terms for someone outside of my field. We evolved into Homo sapiens approximately 300,000 years ago, and we haven't evolved since. Our DNA is 99.999% identical to our Paleolithic ancestors, I began explaining as they focused carefully. The reason we haven't evolved any further is because we haven't had to. You see, each stage of evolution has come in the face of extinction. We were forced to evolve into something more intelligent and more capable in order to stay alive. At each major leap in evolution, we learned how to survive in new ways, evolving into a greater version of ourselves. You understand? Replied Kelly. And that's why the old version dies, right? Right, I replied, because once we begin to adapt and evolve, we transform into a new version that is capable of surviving, and the previous version now becomes extinct. They've all died off. It's a necessary part of the process. We cannot evolve without letting the old versions of ourselves die. What about the monkeys? Replied Kaitiki. Well, except the monkeys, I answered quickly before continuing my mini lecture. And why did we evolve into Homo sapiens? That's right, technology. The nerd in me was taking over as usual. We learned how to use technology, tools and weapons to hunt and gather more food, build better shelters, and so forth. In other words, we used technology to survive more easily. You follow? They both nodded their heads as they listened. Now, our planet is dying, and so are we. Once again, we are facing extinction if we do not adapt. The answer again, of course, is technology. But now it looks much different. Instead of wooden tools, we are harnessing the power of AI and digital hardware, I explained. Instead of using external tech, we are shifting to internal tools that connect us to these AI superintelligences. With the breakthroughs in wearable and injectable devices, we can save ourselves and the planet from extinction. So you're saying the next stage is like half man and half machine? Kaitiki asked. Pretty much, I responded. Only partially machine for now, but after a few dozen generations, it'll be mostly machine. When we begin to have offspring born with new DNA modifications already present, the tech will increase exponentially, allowing it to create more and more advanced beings intentionally. So, in this scenario, the tech becomes the creator? Kaitiki asked. Exactly, I replied. And what happens to us? What do you mean? I replied, surprised that this wasn't clear already. We evolve. I understand, but according to your theory, whenever the species evolves, the previous version dies off, right? The early hominins died off once the Australopithecines came about. Then the Australopithecines died off once the early Homos came about. Then they died off once the Homo erectus came about, and so on. Every other version has died off through the process. Except the monkeys, Kaitiki whispered to herself. So according to this pattern, Kelly continued, the machine people are going to take over and we're all going to die off, right? Well, technically, yes. But maybe it's confusing you when I use the phrase dying off. You could look at it as dying off, or you could look at it as being saved, actually, I answered in an attempt to simplify and clarify. The changes in technology allow us to evolve into something that can survive, which ultimately saves us and keeps us alive. Okay, so actually you're saying the tech is the creator and the savior? Kelly asked. Yes, I exclaimed cheerfully, happy to see how well they were grasping my mini lesson. When each previous version has faced extinction, they've been saved by technology and adapted into something better. Except the monkeys, Kaitiki mumbled in the background. This has led us to where we are today, I continued. This has allowed us to become the most advanced humans ever. We're the most advanced humans ever? Kelly asked with a hint of doubt. Yes, of course. Just look at what science is doing. I mean, we have a functioning lab on Mars operated by robots, for Christ's sake. I let out a laugh as I shared. But you just said a moment ago that both us and the planet are facing extinction, Kelly said. If we are so advanced, how did we end up here? Well, for one, there are way too many of us, I explained. The planet is not made to support 8 billion people. It's severely overpopulated. And the new advancements you're working on are going to reduce the population? Asked Kaitiki. Well, that's a nuanced conversation. People lose their minds when they hear the term depopulation, but yes, ultimately there would be a gradual reduction in the number of people on the planet, I explained. At the end of the day, we have to remember that natural selection is the foundation of our existence. Survival of the fittest. Do you really believe that? Kelly asked me in a direct manner. Do I believe in what? Evolution? I retorted. No, I mean, do you believe the next stage of our existence will come down to survival of the fittest? In some ways, I wish it wasn't the case, but this is how we are designed. We are competitive creatures just trying to survive. I don't agree, Kaitiki replied. Don't agree with what? What you just said about competitive nature. I don't believe this to be true. Okay, well, it's not really like a debatable thing. I mean, it's a fact. I believe we are collaborative by nature, actually, she responded as if she didn't hear me. I feel that when we express our deepest code, we are not competitive against one another, but instead we know we need each other to thrive. We know we need to cooperate in harmony in order to survive, both short-term survival as individuals and in the long term as a species. What are you basing this theory off of, exactly? Like I just said, I feel it. I just looked at her with a blank stare, shocked by what I was hearing. When I tune into my heart and really feel the essence of my humanity deep in my soul, I know that I am a collaborative person by nature, she explained. And when I learn about my ancestors, I see people that work together in unimaginable ways. They survived not because they tried to beat each other, but because they did the exact opposite. I am not here today because of our competitive nature. I exist because we are collaborative by nature. I sat in an uncomfortable silence for a moment, not really sure how to respond. That's really sweet, Kaitiki, I finally answered. I wish that were the case. But like I said, this is not my opinion, this is fact. I know you didn't learn all of this in school like we did, but this is all provable. I can give you resources if this is not about proving to me the theory of evolution. This is about my understanding of the human spirit. And my truth tells me that we are collaborative beings. In fact, it's our lack of collaboration, not competition, that has led us to the verge of extinction. The tone in her voice began to change, and for the first time it was very clear to me that her and Pono were sisters. I'm sorry, but this gets me a little charged up, she began. Sandra, I don't want to disrespect your work and research. I know you are so passionate about it, and I know much of what you are doing is well-intentioned, but I just can't sit here and listen to this without speaking up. I was taken aback by the way Kaitiki was speaking. This whole time she had sat relatively quietly. I didn't think for a second she was triggered by what I was sharing. I'm sorry, Kaitiki, I didn't know you were feeling offended by this, I said. I'm not offended, she replied. This is nothing I haven't heard before. In fact, you said earlier that we didn't learn any of this in school, but actually we are very, very familiar with the way this information is taught in your world. She adjusted her position on the floor, sitting tall and upright. We watched and observed for generations how this theory has been embedded into the minds of the population, leaving no room for discussion or debate. Hold on, I said. I'm confused. Are you telling me you don't believe in evolution? I already told you, this is not about whether or not it's true. It's about how it's depicted and delivered to the masses. It's about how a scientific theory has been weaponized into one of the most dangerous lines of empirical code in the collective consciousness. Empirical code. What's that again? It's like the opposite of primordial code, Kelly replied. It's typically oversimplified viewpoints that sound positive or make sense on the surface, but are actually conflictual with the primordial code already circulating through our being. These conflicting internal and external messages keep the population unsure of themselves and disconnected from the source, allowing empire to grow and expand at the expense of those underneath. Oh, right, I replied, but this isn't that. This is literally a scientifically proven theory of our creation. I don't see how it's used as some kind of bad code. You don't? Kaitiki replied. You just said to me that we are the most advanced humans to ever live, and you stated it as fact. And if you ask anyone else from your world, they would say the exact same thing, as a fact. I wasn't sure how to respond. And why do you think they say it with such confidence? Because they've been told over and over and over that this is true, and that it is in fact a fact. No room for debate or even discussion. And it's not just the textbooks and formal education, but in the subliminal spaces all around us. In the movies, in the media, in the symbols. The symbols? I asked with a confused look. Yeah, the symbols, she responded. Just look at that symbol for evolution. It's a picture of monkeys transforming slowly into humans. We've all seen it 1,000 times, but what does it say? What does it encode? Kelly jumped in. It says we are the most advanced humans ever. It leaves you no choice but to associate any of our ancient brothers and sisters as less intelligent and less capable. Nothing more than knuckle-dragging Neanderthals. Cavemen, a term that's literally synonymous with unintelligent and inferior. Exactly. And let's extrapolate that out a little further, Kaitiki picked up. When the word ancient is attached to anything, ancient medicine, ancient scripture, or ancient principles, what happens? We dismiss it. We automatically assume it's outdated or pseudoscience, or in many people's minds, total nonsense. Because everybody knows the further you go back in our timeline, the dumber we were. She shook her head in frustration. Those Neolithic savages didn't know anything, Kelly chimed in. So don't even bother to look at how they lived. Exactly. Don't even bother to look, Kaitiki said, followed by a sigh. So nobody does. I'm sorry, but I think you guys are just misunderstanding all of this, I replied, feeling really mixed on the way this conversation had turned. Maybe so, Kaitiki answered right back. But one thing I know for sure is that my ancestors didn't need to modify their DNA to survive and thrive. And they didn't need yearly injections to not get sick. And they didn't need government overlords to tell them what's right and wrong. And they definitely didn't need any laws to make them treat Mother Earth with care and respect. Maybe they couldn't fly rocket ships to Mars, but they also had no reason to. It's like the things we point at to prove we are superior are the exact things that prove we've lost our way, Kelly added on. I wasn't really sure what to say. I wasn't interested in arguing with them, and I wanted to receive their opinions openly like I promised I would. I didn't mean to start an argument. I'm sorry, I said to the two of them. We're not arguing, we're just discussing an important topic, Kaitiki responded. This is Okablaya. This is how we talk. If we just nod along in silence and accept everything at face value, we'll end up just like your people. Yeah, this is how we roll, Kelly followed up with a smile, and I fucking love it. They both laughed loudly while I forced out a mild chuckle. I guess I haven't come around to loving these debates so much. Not yet, at least, I replied, but I'll keep trying. You'll learn to love it soon, Kaitiki added. Challenging our beliefs is how we grow. It takes practice. It's known here that if you believe something to be true, you do everything possible to try and prove yourself wrong, not right. Prove yourself wrong? I asked. Yep, she answered. By doing so, you either realize you were wrong and accept the truth, which would be a huge step forward, or if you can't prove it wrong, then you grow more confident in your beliefs, which is also a huge step forward. Yep, Kelly jumped right in. This way, when someone tries to come along and lace your mind with some low vibrational EC, you're prepared to hold your ground. Kaitiki gave her a glance of approval, seeming proud of her for being able to articulate this so clearly. I see, I responded. I guess for this one we'll just have to agree to disagree. Is that something you do here? All the time, Kelly responded kindly. We looked around the yard and realized most people had either already left or were beginning to head out. Come on, let's get going, Kaitiki announced. I'll drop you both off. Yeah, I need to get a good night's sleep, I replied. Pono is counting on me to be well rested tomorrow.
Hey guys, super fast this time. Final scene coming up, and I just wanted to come back to that last reminder to please share this link today with someone you care about. They will thank you, I will thank you, and I can promise the universe will thank you in some way or another. Okay, back to the show.
We drove in silence for the first few minutes, and as I've done in any moment of quiet on this trip, I tried to process everything. This processing in itself is a roller coaster of emotions. I fluctuate constantly between excitement and enthusiasm for everything going on, and complete confusion and fear about where I'm heading. Based on those feelings, I wanted to question Callie a little more on her decision to stay here long term. So, after shift, you just said, I'm staying, and they were okay with that? There were some conversations, she replied, because it's not common for people to stay here. But once they heard my reasoning, they supported me 100%. What was your reasoning? Well, I explained to them that my whole life I always let others lead me where they wanted me to go and make my decisions for me, she shared. I mean, my parents basically mapped out my whole life from the moment I was born. I was going to go to an Ivy League school and be a lawyer just like both of them, whether I liked it or not. They even enrolled me in the most prestigious preschool in New York City to make sure I was on track. As she shared this with me, I immediately felt a connection to what she was saying. It was an eerily similar story to my own. Then, of course, once I started school, I was given crystal clear instructions on how to achieve the highest goals and set myself up for a lifetime of happiness. I never stopped to realize how little of a say I had in any of this, or what I would even actually want if I did have a choice. And you shared all of this with them? Yeah, I told my whole story, and I explained how scary it was for me to suddenly be here where no one was telling me what to do. Nobody was taking responsibility for my decisions. I was suddenly in full ownership of my path, and I had no clue what to do with that, she explained. I mean, don't get me wrong, everyone was helpful with their guidance and advice, but whenever it was time to make a decision, I was on my own. She turned and looked out the window for a second. There's only room inside for one, they would say. The hair on the back of my neck stood up with those words. So I learned to go inside, all alone, and find my way, she continued. And what I realized is that not only should others not be making decisions for me, but that I actually had to completely block the outside influences altogether. If I wanted to find my truth, I had to let it all dissolve. Dissolve? In what way? You know, what others would do if they were me, or what others would say about me, or what my parents would think of me. I never realized how deeply those things affect our decisions. So you just let it all go? I asked. Well, yeah, but it wasn't easy. It was a process, but each small step forward felt like a mile closer to freedom. I felt myself coming alive, like a rebirth. And that's it then. You just left your old life behind forever? You said it yourself, remember? She asked as she turned and looked right at me. If you want to evolve into something greater, the old version has to die.
Sadak magi bugin jeng ko chega du ze chor tor de she la yo kong kun son dun dum bell du be da la ne